I'm Jill, and just going to lead this discussion this morning. I found it very interesting that one of the questions that they posted or suggested right away was, from your personal experience, what have been key behaviors in effective teams? So I kind of thought about, well, we just got started on this team, so what are some other teams that you guys have been on that you have found that were key behaviors?
I know something definitely for me is that one of my really good groups that I've ever been on was during my second semester at school. And we were all really different too, and we actually started doing this before we started. It was just getting to know each other on a personal connection. And I kind of talked about that in the reading too, but I know for me, it's when I get to personally connect with people, I feel more willing to offer my opinion and advice because I feel more comfortable. And so I always found that as a key behavior of people to get them out of their shell and be more comfortable by actually getting to know them, not just for the sense of class, but for like who they are.
Okay. What about you, Paul?
Well, I think that is, ideal. And that's pretty much what happened with Sakaguchi, is that he opened up to his team and let them know something that no one had a clue about, his health. And that then spawned other people to share some of their, shall we say, hidden parts or whatever you want to call it, that permitted that group to then open up more. And so, I think, getting to know each other, getting to become familiar with each other outside of just the formal group setting is a good thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. And do you have anything, Jeff?
Yeah, so mine's kind of like an opposite example of like not effective teams. I think to be effective, everybody has to feel and know that their input is important. I spent 4 years on a school board, an elected position, and I actually got voted in based on being an opposition to how things were actually working. And when I got there, the lady that was made the chairman didn't like the idea that I didn't want to do things exactly the way they were. And she tried to ostracize my opinion a lot of times as we were going towards a vote for a new bond for a high school and middle school. Because of that division, it ended up failing in the community. It only got 43%, and in Idaho, you need 2/3. Over a couple of years, we changed that up. We got some new board members. I was eventually put in as the chairman, and then we started listening to each member of the board. And we were able to start moving things through. But if everybody's input isn't important, the results aren't going to be effective.
Right.
Right. Yeah, what everyone you have said is correct. I mean, I agree with you. And I don't know if you guys know that I work for the church, and I work for a part of the division of the church, what's called Deseret Transportation, and we are the trucks. The church owns 42 trucks, and we have drivers that take the things to the storehouses to DI. We're doing grain right now. Anyway, and I sit in a lot of different meetings, taking notes, operation meetings, and sometimes I'm in those. We work as a team, and then sometimes there's certain ones that just like to hear their voice, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
And you're just like, why? We've gone over, and that's what was in this reading material, is they found that sometimes people would say the same thing, and then someone else would say it in a different way, but it was exactly the same point. So you're like, let's get to the point in a way. So it's interesting. And like you said, Paul, I liked how, there's some companies I've worked for. I worked for a law firm, and they don't want to know about your personal life. They don't want to know that you have children issues or you have issues or whatever. And I liked that he was able to share a little bit about himself, and then his team members started. I found that very interesting and wonderful.
I think that sometimes the company culture comes into play there. There's and especially today with all of this, potential harassment. We don't want to share too much about ourselves. We don't want to be, get away from what the work is. We don't want to get too personal. I think sometimes if there is that kind of a culture established, that people will not want to open up and express about their personal lives. And the stereotypical bosses. I don't want to know about your personal life. I want to know about what you're doing here at work. That kind of a thing. And so I think that has a major effect on how people would approach those team meetings and becoming familiar with each other, because some cultures might not really encourage that kind of activity.
Can I ask you guys a question? How do you guys feel about, though, I know this is specifically towards teams that we're talking about, but what about with customers? If they like personally ask you questions, do you think it's beneficial to get to know like certain clients or customers? Because like when I worked at Starbucks, I got in trouble by my boss, even though a customer personally asked me, I never see you drink coffee. Why don't you drink coffee? And I'm like, oh, it's because I don't do that. And I explained like the church and stuff. And then he was like, I don't want you to do that here because then it's encouraging people not to drink coffee and we're supposed to sell it. But they personally asked me. So it's like, oh, is that my fault? But so how do you guys feel about like, I know we're supposed to technically talk about leadership, but I'm just curious of your guys' opinion on the fact of getting to know like clients or customers personally. Do you think it's beneficial or no, or more harmful?
I think it can be depends on the job type of situation. Like in my situation, I built houses, and the salesmen that come to us are trying to make huge sales. And so for them to get to know us personally can really help them to move things and to get to the goals that they need to, and to have us use them instead of another supplier. So I think that's in a salesperson role. What you did, I don't think is bad, but if you are just in like a fast food type thing, building that relationship where people are coming and going, I can see where it's beneficial, but at the same time, not quite as necessary, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I can also see his perspective where you were kind of talking about why you don't drink coffee, and here you're in a coffee establishment.
Yeah.
But I do understand that Starbucks does have non-coffee products that are sold as well. Mm-hmm. So that is not necessarily a total deterrent to having people come in if you're not drinking the coffee, but drink something else that they have.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next question was, what do group norms have to do with effective team building? And what would you say our current norm is, which, like I said, we've only met, well, first time I've met with you guys. Are they healthy group norms? And if not, what could we change? So let's start with the first part. What do group norms have to do with effective team building?
I can start. I mean, norms help people to be confident in their surroundings and in what's going on. If things are constantly changing, it takes a minute to warm up to the situations and to really feel comfortable to share perspectives. So if you're in a group that constantly meets, I think it becomes very important to have norms so that you can get the meeting rolling quickly rather than the awkwardness of a first meeting that can occur.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jeff. Thanks. I know that, I'm sure some of you have been in meetings and it's just total silence when the boss is asked a question. And then there's the usual ones that always, speak up, like in our reading material. But I think I know with us, in the ones that I attend, I make sure there's an agenda. And I think an agenda is like you, I think like even this, to keep on the point, to keep going, and let's not fray from what we need to be here, and what our objective is. So, anyone else?
And yet, as pointed out in the reading, there are effective teams where they do go off on tangents for a while.
Yes.
But I think, and that all comes into play with that. What they call it, the psychological safety. When you have a group that just clicks and you get along well, you can go off on those tangents and then come back to the material. And I think maybe, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but maybe those little tangents, depending on what the interests are or what the topic is, are some things that help to build that unity, to help build the team to be more effective, because they can get off on those things. Just last night, I had an interesting situation, because I work, my second job is at IKEA, and I'm a cashier, and so there was another cashier. He was going around and taking up the things that have to go back to stock that people leave at the front of the store, and he was collecting the yellow bags and things like that. And there was a customer there, and I forget what it was. Oh man, I wish I could remember exactly what prompted it, but the topic came up just in passing about the scene from Zootopia at the DMV with the sloths. And I was kind of talking to my coworker, but the customer, the female woman, she was right there, and she was kind of hearing in on the conversation. And I was talking to kind of both of them simultaneously. That I have never laughed so hard at a movie scene as I did at that scene with the sloths at the DMV. And the woman checking out, she got a big smile on her face. She's nodding her head, because she knew what I was talking about. My coworker, he was like, yes, that was the greatest scene. He was laughing about, and so we had, in just the space of just like less than 30 seconds, I felt like I was building a camaraderie with that coworker, because in our work, we are each at a check stand. We don't really interact with each other a whole lot, other than to just wait to relieve the other person to give them a break or a lunch. So there's not a whole lot of interactivity between us. But in that just brief 30 seconds, I felt like, we were relating, and the customer was kind of invited into that little circle for just a moment about something that was really funny. And then, even though my coworker stepped off to continue what he was doing, I continued that conversation. I said, well, that was probably the number two funniest thing I ever saw. The other one being the scene in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, where the son is trying to tell his dad how to use the computer. And I said, because my other job, I do IT. And that is totally what it's like being in IT. And the customer, again, she just laughed, and she says, yes, that was a funny scene too. So it was kind of a neat little interaction between my coworker and this customer. And it was very, very brief. It wasn't really personal, but it was something, outside of the realm of, here's your order or whatever. So it was just kind of a nice little interaction, but it was, and here I'm going off on a tangent. but it was about, nothing work related, but it was something that helped to me, I think, to build. Exactly.
Perfect. Well, one thing I noticed in the reading I wanted to read to you guys is it said that on some teams, everyone spoke during each task. On others, leadership shift among teammates from assignment to assignment. But in each case, by the end of the day, everyone had spoken roughly the same amount. As long as everyone got a chance to talk, the team did well. And I believe that. I believe that if we can all, we all have something to, hopefully, to contribute to a team. We all have our own different personalities, but we can learn from one another. And I'm not, I don't believe that there's just one person in a team that has all the ideas. It takes a whole team to make something work. How do you guys feel about that?
I agree. I feel like, though, for me, it might be a disadvantage since you guys have a lot more experience in things. So it's like, what can I really teach them? So,
But I believe everyone can teach us something. It doesn't matter about age or anything. I think that that we can all learn from one another.
Right. Age can be something that creates a problem just with perceptions of people. I think a lot of the problem when I got on the school board, I was 15 years younger than the next closest one to me and 30 to 40 years younger than some of them. And so you just got to let that perception not be there and realize we're an entire team. It doesn't matter what age everyone is. And the problem can be created by either thinking that being younger makes it so your opinions don't matter, or from the other people saying, oh, this person's too young, I don't care what they have to say. Both of those are a problem.
I've had it more where, yeah, especially sometimes at like home ward in church, if we ever talk about in Really Society about like kids or something, and I'll throw like something in there at advice. It's happened before where they're like, well, you're too young to understand. You don't have kids. I'm like, I know I don't have kids, but I have nieces and nephews. Like I've observed, I can see how other people do things with their kids and see if it works or not. So, so that's why it's just kind of odd sometimes. And I think that's another reason why it's really important to get to know the team members. Because once again, like I said, if I didn't actually kind of get to know you guys, I probably wouldn't be saying this. So, but I feel like you guys are actually good listeners.
Thank you. That's very good. So what do we have to do to make sure that it's a healthy group, Norm?
I think Jeff kind of mentioned this a little bit when he talked about like hearing people out and like making sure that they know that their input is respected and wanted, and not just immediately shutting someone down. It's like, oh, that's a silly comment, or like we're moving on and stuff like that, but actually listening. And he kind of already touched on that. So.
Yes. Okay.
And that's established in our instructions for these groups, that we are to have positive comments and respectful comments. I mean, you can disagree, but we can disagree respectfully.
Correct.
As what's that phrase, to respectfully
agree to disagree.
Yes, that's it.
See, that's taught us something. Way to go.
But yes, I think that helps, having those established rules, and it's I almost when I first read that, I thought, do we really need to say this? But what's interesting is over the years that we've had the internet and we have these online chat rooms and discussions and posts and things like that. People, when they go on the internet, tend to put their manners aside and speak their opinion. And that's why we have these flame wars that sometimes erupt online. It's almost like, the gloves come off. I don't have to be a nice person. I can tell you exactly what I think because, you really need to know what kind of a person you are. And so I think that maybe those guidelines have stemmed out of that, because we're in an online environment and we want to make sure that we are putting our best personalities forward and our best manners and everything. So it's just kind of interesting, I thought.
I call those keyboard warriors.
Keyboard warriors.
My rule for myself, which doesn't limit too much what I actually type online, is I won't say anything on there that I wouldn't say to the person right to their face.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm pretty blunt in political debates to people's faces, so I end up saying quite a bit online too.
Okay, so Paul kind of brought this up about the psychology safety in a team increases overall effectiveness? What are the roles of communication and empathy in creating that safety? Because we want to create a safe environment, I guess, in some ways.
Well, I think communication is at the essence of creating psychological safety, because we are only safe when we are sharing that information. I mean, we mentioned earlier about Sakaguchi sharing what he was going through personally in his life. He communicated that to his team, and by doing that, that kind of helped to create that psychological safety, because once that ice was broken, then other team members were willing to share their frailties or what they were going through. And and unless I was misreading this, I think that really helped that team to gel and to bond and to become more comfortable and more productive, because they had shared those vulnerabilities with each other, and people felt like I'm not alone in what I'm doing. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much. I agree with you. You want to be able to go to a safe place, even if it's, it's our homes, but it's also, if you are outside, you want to be able to feel safe and be safe to share your opinions. So I wanted to do just little things. If it's all right with you guys, if we can maybe share or tell about each one of us, because we're going to be together for the next, 10 weeks or whatever. And we're going to be, counting on one another. So I'll start out. I'm Jill Christiansen, and I live in West Valley. I am, believe it or not, 56 years old. And why am I in school right now? I cannot tell you that. But it's just a goal that I set for myself. And so I went through the Pathway program. And I'm going to be very old by the time I get done. I work for the church, which is the most incredible job that I've ever had. And I have wonderful coworkers that do appreciate my opinion and ideas. So, and I'm a mother of 3 and 2 grandsons that are my joy in life. So I do have some health issues. I have an autoimmune disease, and I'm a diabetic and some other things. So that's just a little bit about me. So does anyone else want to share so that we can get to know each other and feel safe?
I can go.
Okay.
I am Alexis Custer. I live in Buckley, Washington. I am the youngest of 5 kids. That it gets confusing, just because there's one that we adopted through love, not literally, and so we count his kids as our nieces and nephews, and I've got 9 nieces and nephews with 2 on the way.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've had stomach issues since before high school. Ironically, me and my sister had stomach issues at the same time, and we had to keep going to the hospital. And I have a ton of food allergies that don't make sense. I am literally allergic to every single food to a certain degree. Some affect me more than others. That's why I always have stomach issues. On top of that, that's one list, and then there's a whole nother list that says I'm also fructose intolerant. And so on that list it says you can have this and this, but on my other list it's oh, you can't have that. So it gets really hard on what I can actually eat and take into my body. And I'm also part lactose and part gluten, so I've got a lot of food allergies, which sucks because food is really good.
Yes.
Really hard. Yeah, that's so me. So, yeah, and I'm I always tease or joke with my mom. I'm Mom, you should have just thrown me away. I'm such a problem, because I also have and this is awesome. A lot of people are no way, but I'm way. I was born without 10 permanent teeth, and 2 of them were wisdom teeth. So I still have 8 baby teeth. And I'm 23.
Wow.
And yeah. And we're about to do, I'm so nervous next month. Even talking about it, I start kind of shaking. But next month, we're going to pull out 4 of them, and I'm going to get implants. And so it's like, oh, my baby teeth. So, yeah. So that's me.
Wow.
Okay. Paul, do you want to share? You
Sure.
don't have to.
Not a problem.
Okay.
I'm Paul Johnson. I live in Draper, Utah with my wife and younger son. We have struggled financially all of our married lives. It has been a major challenge. And so that is why when I heard about the Pathway program from my brother, who is a Pathway missionary, he told me about it. He lives in California, and I immediately jumped on it. He told me about it, and literally within like 3 weeks, I was registered, because I knew that in order to get any kind of a decent paying job, I need to have a 4-year degree. It almost doesn't matter what the degree is in, but you've got to have a 4-year degree. Otherwise, you cannot make the money. And so I jumped on that and went at it in all earnest, and then realized that it was taking away from my time from my family. And so I kind of slowed back a little bit. So I've been going for several years now. I usually just take 2 classes at a time, and I take a couple semesters off every year, just so I'm not doing it too much. But I'm anxious to get the degree, to get the job, but I need to also remember that my family needs my attention as well. So it's been kind of a challenging balance. With working at IKEA, we now have insurance. This is the first time for us to have insurance in 20 years. So all of us have suffered in some way with health or teeth issues or whatever that we haven't been able to address. And now we're finally able to get that taken care of. And so it's been quite a relief to be able to do that now. But it's also kind of reopened some wounds that I realize I've put my family through all this time without them being able to take care of things that need to be done. So I feel like I've kind of failed as a husband and a father. But at least now I'm trying to move forward, and we're going to try to get these things addressed that needed to be taken care of. So that's one of our biggest things. But life is busy because I work a full-time job. I work my part-time job at IKEA. I'm going to school. I have my church calling, and it's just tough. And I was going to take the semester off, and then at the last minute, I realized we were going to be in a financial world of hurt if I didn't get some of my school money to help me to take care of some of my living expenses. And so at the last minute, decided to go to school this semester. And so I've been, I was already scheduled to work for IKEA, all my heavy hours for weeks. And finally, this next week is the first time that since I told them I'm going to school and you need to cut back my hours a little bit, that I'm actually going to have some time to actually do some schoolwork. So I haven't been able to turn much in for either of my classes so far. And hopefully I'm not going to die grade-wise because of that, but we'll see what happens. But that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. Jeff, do you want to share?
Sure. So I work as a general contractor, I think I mentioned. I do that with my 2 brothers, and it's actually a really good job. I decided to go to Pathways about 4 years ago because I don't enjoy working out in the elements. So since I'm self-employed, and as everyone probably knows, the building business is just booming. I mean, I look at it as I'm going to essentially take a pay cut if I ever do use the degree that I get. But at the same time, right now I work outside in 90 degrees. I work outside in 20 degrees. So wind blows, it rains. And they're not necessarily things that I enjoy doing. And so this is just giving me more options for later in life. As far as a family, we just had a baby a month ago, and so I have 4 kids now, 0, 2, 4, and 6.
Wow.
So we're busy with stuff like that. just like Paul, I take 2 classes a semester. I've been doing it for 4 years, and I've got 6 semesters left, counting this one. Just trying to get through it as fast as I can, but 2 is all I can handle with working full time and having kids and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and I can only do 2 at a time also, with my calling and my major calling in the stake. And it's the same thing. And you learn to just, okay, I can do 2, and that's okay. Eventually you all will get to your good degrees. So thanks for sharing. That way we kind of get to know each other a little bit. And that's what was in this, in our reading this week is, you don't want to just become, oh, that's a worker, or that's a janitor. We're all human beings, and we're all have something to give. I truly believe that. And I truly believe that we can learn from one another. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to start with an opening prayer. Sorry. I'm not good at
All
this.
right.
Forgive me. Forgive me,
Right.
Sister McHenry or whatever. Okay. So how about let's just say you were in a team and you have personal examples of an organization where you were involved. How have those gone for you? Well, I can give one example, for instance. As you know, July 24th here in Utah is a big month, is a big thing. It was when the pioneers came. And about 4 years ago, and I hadn't really started school yet and gotten into it, which was a good thing. They asked me, the state came to me and asked me to be in charge of a float for the July 24th parade. And I was like, okay, and I said to them, do I look like a builder? Do I look like an architect? Do I look like I know what I'm doing? I said, I use my shoe to hammer things sometimes, and they just, oh, we feel you're the one because you can organize it. Okay. So we had not lived in the state very long, so I didn't know anybody. And at the time I was working for my boss at the time used to live in my state. So I went to him and I explained to him, I don't know what to do. I don't know anyone. So he went down the state calendar with me and proceeded to tell me, this gentleman works for Napa. This gentleman is an artist. This one is an artist. This one is a builder. This one builds homes, and we went down the list. And so I submitted my names, and they called people. And I want to tell you that it was easygoing from the beginning. It wasn't. They had called a co-person to help me, and she wanted to be in charge. She said, I am here to do this, this, and this, and you are here just to send the emails. So the counselor in the state presidency came to her and said, no, that's not the way it is. Jill was called to be over it. And she never showed up again. So I had to start at scratch again. And I have to tell you that once she was gone, things moved smoothly. It was like, I shouldn't say a light came on, always, but it went so smoothly. I found a place to, it just so happened it was one of our vendors. It was Warner Truck, the church buys trucks from. They had a facility for me to build the float in. Man, we just got things going and we got it done. And then I took a week off. But have you ever had where there's just been one person that just kind of brings the team down? Have you ever experienced that?
I guess my poor memories coming into play here, because I've been since I read that question to think about. I've been trying to think. I'm almost as old as you are, Jill, and I think I have had so many jobs. I could probably pull something from somewhere, but there aren't a whole lot of places where I've worked over the years where we had, a real team setting, a real group setting. I mean, they called us teams, but it wasn't something to where that, we really worked as a team to do anything. And so I am kind of coming up short on that end. However, when I was at Disneyland and I was in custodial and I was a working lead, we didn't have a formal team set up that worked the same team all the time. But what we would do is, I'm thinking of as parade lead. What I would do, because we would be responsible for cleaning up after the parade, the various parades during the day. And so the team members would change, but a lot of times the leaders stayed the same and kind of worked together and coordinated things. But I think what really worked well in that setting is having clear roles defined, which again, it's very different from what we're talking about here. But in that situation, it was very apropos, because we would have, we would just say, okay, Adventureland, you need to send me 2 people at 3:00 to help with the cleanup of the parade. And Tomorrowland, you're sending me a person. And Main Street, you're sending me a person. And so you'd get these bodies, so to speak, that fill that position. But we had to have very clear, concise directions as to what everyone was doing. We would have a liner. Someone would carry around a trash liner first to get all the big stuff up that we can't sweep up. Then the push brooms come through and they push all the trash into piles. And then you have someone that comes through with the pan and broom that sweeps up the piles. So it's a very, very logical layout. And as long as it's coordinated properly and people know where they're supposed to go, it works very efficiently. Well, that experience all stemmed from the first time I worked in custodial, which was 25 plus years ago. Well, about 2 years ago, in my efforts to try to get more income in, and thinking about my potential management internship I want to do with Disney maybe next year as part of my degree here, I thought, well, why don't I get my foot back in the door? I'm going to go back to Disneyland as a seasonal employee. Even though I live in Utah, seasonal employees, they only work Christmas, Easter, and summer. And so for 1 year, I was down there doing that. And it's interesting how the thinking has evolved. And even though we still have parade leads, we still have parade teams that go through and clean stuff up, it's interesting how this time around, in my very short time that I was working there, I wasn't the parade lead. I was just there, to clean up and stuff. How it seemed like every week they changed what they wanted us to do. The supervision was so sporadic. And they're like, well, this isn't working. Let's do it this way. And so the next week we do it this other way. And then another supervisor will say, well, that's not very efficient. We need to do it this way. And then we'd have to change how we do it the next week. And then the next supervisor comes up and says, actually, you guys are both wrong. We need to do it this way. This is the way we're going to do it. And it was so frustrating. It's like, well, are we doing it this way now? No. We changed that. We're not doing it that way. We're doing it this way now. You need to go out and do this and this and this. And it was just so confusing because there was no consistency. There was no real set structure that could be relied on. And what was the most frustrating about it is you had people who still work at Disneyland Custodial that worked there when I was there 25 years ago that know how to do this. But the managers are not listening to the employees and the leads that they have. They each one want to have their say. They want to, take the lead and say, well, this is the best way to do it, without going to the people who've been doing it for 20 years to say, hey, what is the best way to do this? And so it's just interesting seeing that dynamic in that situation, which I think I've kind of boardwalked a little bit, but maybe you get an idea of what I was trying to say. So,
yeah. Jeff, do you have any example?
nothing personal specific, but I can definitely. There's examples of that in readings and in stuff that I've seen before. As far as I'm concerned, I pretty much just have a team with my two brothers, and we've
Right.
got down pretty good at this point. But I can definitely see where, like you said, one person can destroy the whole dynamic.
Right. What about you, Alexis?
Yeah, going back to Starbucks, me and my boss didn't really get along a whole lot. But then again, he didn't get along with anyone there very much. But especially during rush hours, it was always really crazy. And I hated working with him. Like whenever I would see the schedule and I saw that we were scheduled for like, even if our times like interlapped, I was like, oh no. And it was like I always dreaded it because he would always put me on bar, which I loved being on bar and stuff and making the drinks. Like I didn't really have to talk a lot. I just focused and just like went to town. I felt like a well-oiled machine. It was fun. But there's always a bar assistant next to you and who like preps the milks for you. And then I would do the steaming, the syrup, and then like the coffee and then finish making it. And whenever he was my bar assistant, we never flowed. And I had a supervisor who was the best supervisor in the world I've ever had. And he literally, like, he moved with me. It was like we were always kind of doing a dance. And it literally felt like that because we, like, never ran into each other. It's like I would go under, he would, like, go around and stuff and back and over. And it flowed super well. But with Michael, my boss, he was just like this big giant that was in the way. So, because he was like 6'4", 6'5". I'm not saying that all people who are 6'5", like your son Paul, who are giants, but I'm just saying he was definitely though just always in the way. It was kind of like I would need to reach for something, and he was just like this brick wall who wouldn't move. And he was slow about it. So I'm like, Michael, like, and whoever is bar, you always needed to go with how their style is because they do the most of it. And the bar assistant, is to assist them. And so that was another reason why Nick was so good at it, my supervisor, because he would assist us. He would figure out how we did it and do it effectively. But Michael couldn't get past that. He would always do it how he thought it needed to be done because he was manager, even though he had only been working for Starbucks for like a few months since he became manager because something with the military or something like that. So it's like he had less experience than us, but he demanded that he knew what was better. And whenever anyone worked with him, the floor never ran smoothly. And so we tried explaining different things that like we could do and stuff. And he would just always fight us. And so I worked there for almost 2 years. I experienced this practically daily. And it was really, really frustrating and irritating. But sometimes like I still don't like to speak up when things need to be changed because I've experienced that a little bit at work now with a girl I've trained. Sometimes she doesn't listen to my advice. It's like I don't give you advice for the sake that I want it done a specific way, but it's because this is the most effective way. I've been working here for like a year and a half. And I've learned it from my bosses who have been here for 5 years. I promise you it's a good way, but she doesn't listen. And so I'm trying to do better about speaking up of like, hey, like in a nice way of, I promise this is a really good way to change it and we'll flow better. Like as a team, we'll work much better together if we know the system that works the best, like Paul was talking about. And so I've definitely experienced where one person just takes one can really throw off the balance of the workflow and if things like turn out well or not. So
great, thanks for sharing, guys. So the last question is, what can we do as individuals to initiate effective team behavior? And I think Alexis just kind of basically hit it on the nail, is learning to speak up in a kind way, not in a mean way. But what are some other things that we can do to make sure our team, hits the goal?
I think that if it really is a team setting, and everyone knows that they're all there to contribute to the team, that maybe if there are some if there is some resistance to talk more or open up more, that maybe we could suggest we have, you know, get to know you type of a thing, and open up somewhat. You might need to clear that through whoever the team leader is, but I think that would be something that we as team members could do to help a team to you know, do a better job of being more successful.
Correct.
I think also, I'm sorry, I know I just spoke, but there, so I talked about how if something needs to be corrected, you kindly approach them about it, but also it's really important, I think, if you give positive feedback as well, sporadically and always, because if you're always going to someone like, hey, you need to change this, or hey, you need to do better at this, it really starts to like bring down their self-esteem. But if just randomly you're like, hey, you did this like perfectly, it was so great, that really can help. And I know from personal experience, it's helped me. And I've also had it where we don't get that a lot, and me and my other coworkers have talked about it. So I think building people up by compliments is really good. And I've seen that during our accountability project that we have to do for this semester. One of my partners, Phoebe, is super good about that. She is so sweet, and she's always like, you're doing amazing, you rock, like, keep it up. And just, she's very positive all the time. So I'm like, yeah, like I can continue with this. Because at first I was like, an accountability project? Like, I hate goals. But but it's actually been, she's actually helping me by being positive.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that it kind of goes back to the first 5 questions. As I was focusing on those, I was thinking of what type of things would help me in a situation, like having your opinion heard, stuff like that. So on the final one, what I put is that I need to realize that the opinions of everyone else is important, and then I need to collaborate with them and come to a overall solution. And so I think as an individual, what needs to be done is we need to look at the 5 answers that we wrote before and make sure that we are allowing everyone else the same rights and stuff that we put down in those answers.
Okay. Great. You guys, this has been great. Do you have any last comments? And once again, I'm sorry we forgot the prayer. I will do better. I'm really killing myself over that. But do you have any last comments? Or I don't know what happened to Steve. I'll try to reach out to him.
No, I think this discussion went really well.
Looking at the sign-up sheet of my next week.
Oh, that's all right.
I think you are.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll plan on out the announcement.
Right. You are. I think you are signed up, Jeff.
Okay.
Yeah, for next week.
I agree. I think this has been a great discussion. I appreciated the material and our discussion of it. And I think that we are turning out to be a pretty good team ourselves. So I think this is nice. And I appreciated your having us open up a little bit. I think that was beneficial. And at least we'll see in time if that helps out. But I think it's so far we're doing great.
Right. Good. Well, we can end early if you'd like. Like I said, I will reach out to Steve, and I want to thank also Paul and Jeff for reaching out to me, because I was so nervous about doing this, because I'm very old school when it comes to technology. In fact, my husband does not have a cell phone. He will not get one. And when it comes to technology, I don't have any backup at my house. So I had one of the missionaries, we have service missionaries, the coordinator over them, come and try to help me. And he said, Jill, I don't know what you have to do here. So thank you so much for the two of you to reach out and show me where I needed to do. So, you know, the bottom line is learning to just read the instructions, I guess. So anyway. So yeah, Jeff, I think you have it next week. So on that, I just look for the email and then I click on the link, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys saw, me and Paul were talking about this, but I guess, because I didn't really read through it last week as detailed, but I read through it this week, and we're supposed to post the hyperlink for everyone to get access to easily on
The discussion.
the discussion page.
Right. And Paul did that last week. That's how I watched your guys's last week.
Oh, you're talking
Yeah,
about
what she means is the link, for the live meeting.
Yeah.
You post a link for that, and then after you've got the recording, then you'll also post the recording.
Okay.
So, but yeah, so this week's activity, the discussion thread for just our group,
Right.
technically we're supposed to put the link to our chat in that discussion board, but I think it's whatever works best for us. If we just want to email it or text it, I think that works too.
Okay.
But yeah, technically we're supposed to put it in that thread, because that's where everyone knows where I can go to get that link. So
I just didn't know if the teacher would look at it and base it oh, they didn't initially do it, and if we'd get points off or anything.
Right. Oh, I got what you're saying. Okay.
yeah, I don't think that's a problem, because she commented on last week's link and she said she watched our discussion and she thought we did really, really well.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
Good. All right. Great. I hope we're done early. You can all now either go back to bed or go to bed.
Hey, well, thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks.
That's good. Thanks, guys.